didn't get much sleep last night. It might put me to sleep.
Nah. I had a bottle of green tea right before I went to bed, so I was awake. Yeah. I had a little too much caffeine.
From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, July the 12th, the year 2017. And now, here they are, still with a big smile on their face, still breathing on their own after a little absence, Jim and Rich.
Hey.
Hey, did you miss us?
Yes.
Oh, you missed us.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. At least somebody did.
Jim, you know what? I come in here this morning, and what did I say a couple times? Let's think happy thoughts.
Yeah, and I was a bit cranky when I came in.
But
so.
and let's not get off on this tangent. But do you remember? You know what I hated when we were in high school? You'd always get one of the girls that say, you know, if there was like arguments or something going on, people, come on! I'm like, get the heck away from me!
Yeah, the usual response to that was something like, bite me.
Yeah, right, something like that.
Something like that. Geez, we haven't been together since, what, March of 08, right? That was what the last time.
You just said we have 9 years worth
We've
of
got 9 years worth of stuff to
talk about.
I wanted to come back and pick up something last time we got together, just briefly, because it was an interesting conversation that I heard after I left here on the radio, and it kind of talks about how the game of baseball can really bridge the generations. Mm-hmm. When we were here the last time, it was right after Jimmy Pearsall passed away. Jimmy Pearsall was a great outfielder in the 50s and 60s. It was the outfield instructor for the Cubs minor leaguers in the 80s, I think, 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I don't know. He might have even been more recent than that.
No, I think it may be a little bit later than that. He may have gone into the late 80s, early 90s. But some of the young outfielders that he worked with, guys like Doug Glanville, who had a halfway decent career in the majors.
Sure.
Rafi Palmeiro, if you remember, Rafi Palmeiro started in the Cubs system as an outfielder.
Sure.
He played left field, if I remember.
Yeah.
Before he roided up and hit 500 home runs and then shook his finger at Congress. Right before he
roided it up for us.
Right before he failed the drug test and got suspended. And there was somebody else he mentioned. One of the things they always talked about was how good Jimmy was with the young guys, talking to them about what it's like to be a major leaguer and all the things, and the things he taught them about playing the outfield was taught to him by Tris Speaker.
Oh my God,
Tris Speaker was a coach for Boston in the 40s and 50s when he came up. Tris Speaker played from like 1908 to 1928, played for Boston, played for Cleveland, was not in the first Hall of Fame class in Cooperstown, but was in the second Hall of Fame class.
When we were kids, if you ever heard discussions like, the type we have and other shows have, Tris Speaker was always thought to be up to the point maybe where a guy like Willie Mays or DiMaggio came along before Mays, obviously, was the best defensive center fielder in baseball for a long time, known as that. Yeah.
That was the guy who taught Pearsall.
Right.
Now, when they were talking about this on the radio, it was the weekly discussion, the Tuesday discussion on the Score with Joe Madden. Mm-hmm. And the guys on the midday show asked him, hey, did you know Jimmy? He said, I met him a few times, nothing really, no really thing. I admired him and respected him. Mm-hmm. And they brought up the fact that Tris Speaker was his outfielder mentor. And Joe brought up, Joe in his minor league career was primarily a catcher. And he didn't play that much. He didn't play that long. He didn't have that long of a playing career, but he did play some outfield, and also when he went on to coaching, he said his outfielding lessons were taught to him, and I can't remember the guy's name. Was not a big name in the game, but he learned his outfield lessons from Joe DiMaggio.
The guy that
Taught Madden.
Was it Jimmy Reese?
No,
maybe?
no, it was Sam something or other, an Italian name, if I remember.
Not Sam Mealy.
No.
Okay. That doesn't
But it was interesting that you listen to that and you see how the generations connect in the game.
Yes, it's interesting. The interesting thing too is you couldn't think of the name of the gentleman who taught Madden.
He wasn't a
but,
big name.
My point would be you don't have to be a big name to know the game and be able to teach it. And it's not, you could probably learn a lot from guys who never even advanced out of the minor leagues. I mean, they're still pros, and they're,
Joe had a Madden, I think, was a great reputation as a hitting coach.
Right, and he's, or I'm not sure about that, but he was, and he himself was never a spectacular hitter or anything.
No. And I mean, think about the guys, Charlie Lau.
Right.
Oh my God, everybody thought he was the guru of hitting. Mm-hmm. And he never had that much of a career.
No, I think his career was fairly long. I mean, not super long, but maybe 8 years or 7, 8 years.
Yeah, I was going to say
never a really good hitter.
I was going to say maybe he played 8 years.
Yeah, but he was. But I mean, he could teach. Well, if you look at the guys who are, I'm not sure who the Sox hitting coach is right now, but the Cubs hitting coach is what's his name? There's
John
Sally.
John
Sally?
John Sally or John Malley?
Malley.
John
and
Malley.
The other, there's two. And Eric Hinsky, who actually played, he's the assistant hitting coach.
You're right.
Actually played Major League Baseball and might have been in the Cubs system.
Yes, he was.
Time.
Yes, he was.
But
I think then wound up in Toronto.
I think most of his career was in Toronto. But now he at least played Major League Baseball and had some success. But Malley, I don't know if he even ever played the game at the major league level.
I don't think so.
Well, it's interesting there too, though, Jim. I was totally against guys like, say, Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer really sort of taking over the game general manager-wise. There's a lot of guys like that. And but really, when you think about it, Epstein and Hoyer obviously know what they're doing. There's other guys in that genre, if you want to put it that way, the whiz kids, the guys who never played, who are I don't know are they mathematicians?
They're numbers. They're numbers guys.
There's numbers.
They
guys.
started to study that.
And some of them are good, and some of them are not, just like any other phase of the game. But I don't know where the heck I was going to go with this, James. Where I was starting. No, I guess I was going to say that guys who never were anything and never major leaguers even could still teach, even though they didn't have major league experience. Sure. And that's where I went into the GMs.
Yeah, and there are guys who started to study the game, and I think from a number standpoint, started to look for trends, started to look for things that you started to play around with stuff and dug around with formulas and started to prove things were really true. Some of it I know your favorite is analysis by paralysis, or the other way around, paralysis by analysis. But some of it does pan out. We've been avoiding talking about the first half of the Cubs season here for about 9 minutes.
Let me just say that to piggyback on that, though. I just got done reading John Calipari. I guess it's his second book. Interesting. He talks a little bit about all the numbers in the difference, specifically the sport he's in, which is basketball. And he says, he understands and some of those numbers are valuable, but he says, the traditional box score, the numbers you get out of that, he said, those numbers are there for a reason, and they're important numbers. And he feels that way about all of the other sports. When you see in basketball, obviously field goals, assists,
right.
Free throws,
that's
rebounds.
That's your basic
stuff.
That's your basic stuff.
Right. So, and he said that's still, he said the guys who invented those stats, if you want to put it that way, or brought those stats to the forefront. Those stats are still good. They are the best stats there is, and the same goes for baseball: wins, losses, home runs, batting average, all of that.
That's still the basic fundamentals of understanding the game and understanding a team.
I was explaining BABIP to the guys at coffee the other day.
Hey, BABIP.
I got about 5 minutes of good laughter out of BABIP.
BABIP?
Because I said, guys, you all played a little baseball. I said, here's the statistic. BABIP basically says that the guys who put the bat on the ball are more successful getting hits than
the guys.
And they're like, "What did you just say?" And I said it again, and they said, well, basically they got a kick out of it.
Out of all the stats, that people have developed, I think one that I find interesting, and I'd have to go into it a little bit more. I think we should do a sabermetric stat of the program each time and talk about
that'd
it.
Be hilarious.
Yeah, that'd be. But one is the FIP.
Now, what was the FIP again?
That's the fielding independent pitching. That's simply a measure of how effective the pitcher is without dealing with the fielder. Without dealing with that. I can't.
So that's just strikeouts and walks and stuff?
I'd have to go back and look at the formula again.
You met Dave Rule.
Yeah.
And his son is pitching, and he's about to go into college. So he's at that period of time when he plays with a travel team. He does quite well. And one day Dave texted me, and he gave all his stats, including WHIP. And I thought to myself, I started to think about WHIP, which is walks and hits per innings pitched or whatever.
Which isn't a good
but I'm
measure.
Thinking, I always think, John McGraw or Casey Stengel, if a pitcher doesn't have a good WHIP, and at that time WHIP was not a statistic,
right.
I mean, they're going to put it this way. Those guys are hot under the collar if they see a pitcher walking too many guys.
Yeah.
That's all that statistic basically is.
Really, that's what it's saying, is how many guys is the pitcher putting on base per inning.
Right.
If you play fantasy ball, you're always looking. That's one stat you look at, a pitcher's WHIP.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. And that's one measure of it. One of the things that was interesting was after the debacle over this weekend of what was it, 11? However, 11-3 that the Brewers beat the Cubs, and 14-3 that the Pirates beat the Cubs on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things Joe mentioned after the game, listening to that, he said, "Well, we have to get back to." Well, we put runners on base, but we have to get back to bringing them home. We're effective at getting the runners on base, and we have to get them home. Talked about all these things we have to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting, again, and it goes back to some of the early Bill James things in some of his writings, was a measure of a team, and he uses the Pythagorean theorem, which basically takes the runs scored and runs allowed, using it into the formula. And that is a predictor, and based on the runs scored and runs allowed, it's going to tell you what this team's record should be. What this record should be. You look at the Pythagorean theorem for the Cubs right now. Their record should be 44-44. They're 43-45.
Yeah, so it's right there.
So they're right there. There is nothing. What are you getting back to, Joe? You getting back to last year? Last year is gone.
Yeah. Well, Joe is the man with the proverbial finger in the dike. I mean, he's.
I got a joke here, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, you better not. And I got to say, so the other day I was at the library, and the chess guys were in there on Friday.
Oh, Joe and Pete.
And Pete says, "What's wrong with the Cubs?" And I said, I have no clue. He said, "Should they fire the manager?"
Oh, God, no.
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, but I would say the Cubs, I said this to you before the broadcast, they hit the wall early. I think that's number one. I'll tell you, I'm impressed with the Brewers. I think the Brewers are
Brewers.
going to win the division. And
Yeah.
the game that you
Yeah.
just mentioned, Jim,
Yeah.
where they had to come in
Yeah.
and play the one game and really took care of business. That game, not the score of it, but the fact the Brewers came in here, it wasn't part of their trip when the schedule was planned.
Right.
They came in, they took care of business in a big-time way, and they went out of town, and then they beat up on the Yankees 2 out of 3 or whatever they did. And I'm like, Brewers are for real. The Cubs are, 5.5 is doable for either the Cubs or the Cardinals.
Sure.
I'd say.
Sure.
But I don't think it's going to happen.
I really don't think it's going to happen either right now. It was interesting. I've been starting to look at talk about numbers and projections and things. I've been looking at Fangraphs lately, and I looked at it. Sunday, which did not at that point in time had not updated for Sunday's results. But it still has the Cubs winning the division with, I'm thinking here, 85 with an 85-77 record.
Wow.
Brewers were at 83 wins, and the Cardinals were at 500.
Well, I think the Brewers, would they have 50 wins at the break?
They're
Or,
50 and 41 right
so
now.
they'd have to win only 33 more games, and I think they played 90. They played 90. The Cubs have played 87 or 88.
They've played 91 games, and the Cubs have played 88.
Okay.
So,
You know what? It's not a matter of. To me, you could take all the stats and throw them out the window, but that's my usual perspective.
Right.
But you know what? When I look at the Cubs play, here's what I'd say to you. Good team that's playing well like the Cubs did last year. It's almost like a foregone conclusion. They're going to win the whole thing. Okay, last year, a bad team. We see bad teams. They're bad, but the most frustrating thing, and where we're at this year, is a team that takes a step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
2 steps forward,
Yeah.
another one back.
Yeah.
That is, to me, more troubling in a season. I'm not talking over the long haul because the Cubs just have too much talent. But I think this team, the first thing I want to, the biggest problem I see, and somebody said it the other day, I don't know who it was, is the focus. You know what? It's almost like they really could focus in really well to, as you said, maybe knock the crucial runs in when the runners were in scoring position, or get the crucial out when they needed it, and defensively. They don't have that focus.
no.
And if they don't have it over 80-some games, I doubt. Maybe the All-Star break will help them. That the most of them, or all of them other than Wade Davis, are going to be able to sit home and relax. Maybe that will help. But when you are just in that mode of, I'm going to try to do anything to make us play better, you're in the wrong mode. You gotta, you can't hurry the whole process. If you swing at the second pitch, and maybe the third one would have been the one last year that you would have nailed and got the big hit. When you're in that mode, it's hard to get out of it.
Yeah, and I think one other thing you have to look at this year is you have to look at the starting pitching, especially the fifth slot, because the combination of Montgomery, Butler, and who was the guy that went out, Brett Anderson, was just awful. Anderson more. Montgomery, Montgomery had his problems with the Brewers, I think it was. And Lester was just god-awful on Sunday. Couldn't get out of the first inning. It hasn't been effective. It hasn't been good. And now Lackey is on the DL. Not that Lackey had been any great shakes this year. Honestly, I can't see this. I can't see this team making the postseason. It was an interesting interview the other day on The Score with Theo, and he was very honest and very blunt, and in a sense took the responsibility for what's out there. But he also said that we don't play well and we need to play well. He didn't throw anybody under the bus. He may have done it sort of collectively. The other thing that was asked, and it was a very honest answer. He said, "They said, you going to be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline?" And he said, honestly, he said, we would like to be buyers.
Mm-hmm.
But he said after the All-Star break, he said, if it all goes to hell.
Yeah, you know what? We're not buying just to buy.
Yeah,
You
no,
know-
no, and that was his point. He said, we're not going to buy just to buy.
Now, you know what? Here's the thing: the sports writers, and I don't know what they're saying on radio. I don't listen to them, but the sports writers are like, got to make that trade. Got to make. And you know what? Let me tell you something. If you make the trade, and say the trade puts you over the top into the playoffs, you're going nowhere in the playoffs anyway. So you're going to give up a good future asset to get somebody. Yeah, maybe that person. Hopefully, it's never a sure thing, and I don't even know who that person would be. That guy. But say that it's successful. It puts you in the playoffs, and say it's a player that you're not going to control after this year.
Right.
What is the point? There is no point.
What's the point?
Yeah.
They did make the big trade last year at the deadline, and
Excellent trade.
it was an excellent trade. They gave up a lot.
Yeah.
They gave up a lot.
Yeah, they did.
And I think Gleyber Torres was ready to come up with the Yankees and got injured.
Injured, yeah.
But you were in the position and you had to make the move, and that was what was done.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just struggling to get into the playoffs now,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. No, you know what, Jim? What you just said is a mouthful. Is perfect because, hey, when you got the team, and you just want to solidify that thing, drive that nail home, you make that trade because you know what? We're looking at a world championship. But when you got a team who, again, I'm going to say, even if you make a trade and you get into playoffs, you are not. I don't see them winning a world championship. Not the way they're playing. Then what's the point of making the move?
That's right. I kind of agree. I agree with you. I mean, I'm just glancing down at the stats page in the Sun-Times today, and I'm looking at Schwarber hitting 178, Zobrist at 214, Russell at 226. Nice to see. Caratini finally got a hit. But Hayward, well, he's hitting 254, but I guess he's hitting better than last year.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too. Now Hayward is that's a great name to bring up. If Hayward was hitting better than last year and the whole team was hitting as good as they were last year, this would really be lights out because Hayward is such a good defensive player.
Yeah.
That, if he hits 260 or say 270 or whatever, man, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I just, the whole thing is so up and down. It just tells me there's, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying there's big problems, but there's big problems this year. I think once you get this, where am I going? Once you get this year over with, I think they can get back on the track.
I think you're going to see, although I kind of looking at him and thinking about John's favorite basketball player with the analogy, your buddy trying to get a max contract in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Arrieta is going to go out in the free agent market, and I'd be shocked if he got a big deal.
He might be back with the Cubs.
He could be back with the Cubs.
Because he ain't getting no $200 million or whatever.
Whatever he thinks he's going to get. 2 years ago, he might have.
Yeah, his. You know what though? I love reading Jake's comments in the paper because he's pretty realistic about it. And he said, that's sort of been my career. He says, Baltimore, I was up a little bit, then went down. Came over here, I was down at first, then I came back way up.
Yeah.
And now I'm down again a little bit. And he said, hey, he was honest. He was
Yeah.
like, that's been my career, sort of up and down.
You know, another one that I was thinking about when I was kind of comparing him to who always, everybody loved him, but when you looked at his career, Rick Sutcliffe basically had one big year everywhere he pitched.
Mm-hmm.
One big year.
Yeah.
And that kind of made him with there. He had a big year when he came up with the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
He was big with Cleveland. He had one big year with Chicago. No. I think he had another big year with Chicago, but he had some down years.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had some injury problems.
He had
too.
some injury problems, and then he went to Baltimore. I think he had one decent year there.
I think the difference I see, though, is Rick Sutcliffe was I think he had a fairly consistent career from the point of view of, you could pretty much, he was injured a time or two, but when he was healthy, he was going to go out there and probably pitch a competitive game. Jake has gone right off he's gone from totally dominant to like, if he gets 5 innings and we're happy.
Yeah. Which kind of you bring that up, and it makes me think about that article. Did you ever look at that article I sent you with the interview with Seaver from the New York Post?
No, I haven't looked at it.
Tom Seaver was a really, really interesting interview. Tom Seaver has a vineyard out in California and is making wine and very happy. And I got to find a bottle of Seaver wine and see how it is. But talked about some things that he viewed with pitching. And actually there was another article I had seen kind of right after that. He said, forget about velocity. Just learn how to pitch.
Yeah, well, that for sure. No doubt.
He said, I'm tired of looking at box scores, and I look at the starting pitcher, and I look under innings pitched, and I don't see at least a 7.
Yeah. No, that's
he says,
true.
now I'm not even seeing 6.
No, he's right on the money about that.
Yeah.
He's right on the
And
money.
I'm going, God almighty, what happened?
Yeah. Who knows? You know what, though? I give the managers and probably, I don't know how much, but the agents a lot of credit for this crap. Excuse me, John. I'm sorry, but
John just woke up. As soon as,
as
soon as you said that, he woke up.
The managers are. I mean, they are so jumpy. I think we talked about, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but I watched it wasn't the famous 26-23 or 4 game between the Phillies and the Cubs. It was another game that they showed when there were Phillies and Cubs. And without going into the whole scenario, both pitchers, neither of them were the aces of the staff. The Cubs pitcher was Les Lancaster. I don't remember who the other pitcher was.
Lester the Molester Lancaster.
But he got in trouble, say the 6th, and Stick Michael was the manager. Came out, and I thought, I'm thinking what I see today, he's out of the game.
Right.
But Michael talked to him. He stayed in the game. He worked his way out of the jam. Pitched all the way. Don't think he made it into the 8th, but he made it through a couple outs in the 7th. Same with the other pitcher. Got in a jam, and manager came out and talked to him and left him in, and he got out of his jam. And I'm like, when I'm trying to connect this thing with what Seaver's saying, that's what's happening. A guy gets in trouble. The first thing is the manager is out of the dugout, and there's a new pitcher in the game.
Joe got a lot of heat on Sunday with leaving Lester in and giving up 10 runs.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it's like, why didn't you do anything after he'd given up 5 runs? And Joe's attitude was, there were 2 outs.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's the way you'd be thinking.
That's the way you'd be thinking. He said, should I make a change? Well, there's 2 outs. Well, then what does he do? He gives up a grand slam then the next pitch.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, it's that there is. There's another subject. I mean, the media and the way they look at things is just to me backwards and sort of stupid. Madden's certainly not managing the game to try to make anybody look stupid or to put his team in such a hole that they can't even get out of it. But I mean, realistically, with 2 outs, even though 5 have scored, you think the manager's going to take the starting pitcher out? I mean, if he gets out with 5 runs, you're still thinking, got a lot of time. If he straightens himself out, you got a lot of time to get back in this game.
You still got time to get back in the game.
So,
I understand his point, and I understand his logic. Mm-hmm. At that point, I don't necessarily would have said, "Nah, you don't need to pull him. It's got 2 outs. Let him get out of it."
Yeah, for sure. Well, I bet you this much: if he would have pulled them with 2 outs in the first inning, there would have been comment about that too.
Yeah, why didn't you say
what the heck? You got you only got 2/3 of an inning. Now you're going to burn up your bullpen. It's right before what It's just there is just so. To me, does a manager? Do you have to question what a manager or coach does sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean sometimes you do.
You sit there and scratch your head.
Everyday thing is
It
ridiculous.
it kind of comes to the issue. It kind of comes to the issue of the news cycle and how much time and everything you need to fill. And I think we need to take a break. Are you awake there, John?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's break.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norge and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, July the 12th, the year 2017 with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norge, Illinois. And now back to Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro.
I will pose a question for you just to think about. You don't necessarily have to answer, but I'm glancing down at the deals page yesterday in the Sun-Times and looking at the American Association. Why does Sioux City... Oh, excuse me. One is Sioux City, one is Sioux Falls.
Oh, okay.
There's the Sioux City Explorers and the Sioux Falls Canaries. I thought, why do they have 2 teams?
I thought you were going to say it was. I don't know if it was yesterday's, but it was recently. I saw that the guy, and I'm not going to be able to think who the guy is, but he was a major leaguer, former major leaguer that was released from. I don't know if it was the American Association team or which league it was, but obviously somebody maybe who just wanted to keep playing, or maybe he had thoughts of resurrecting his career and going back to the majors. And I wish I could think of it now, but it was a fairly
I'm
well-known
just
name.
looking at the last two days in.
Did you see, Jim, that David Ross is going to play with a team called the Kansas Stars?
Yes, and that is the National Baseball Congress tournament.
Right.
Actually, so, and it's semi-pro and amateur teams that play in a tournament. So
that's a nice pickup for a semi-pro or amateur team.
Yeah,
a guy who's got over 100 career homers and a couple world championships under his belt. I think that'd be a really nice pickup.
I think that's a good pick.
Heck of a pickup.
I think that's a good pick.
Listen, somebody asked me. I'm not going to say the name. Do you think that David Ross being gone and I said,
no,
not really. I mean, hey, he added a lot to the team, but I mean, that should not. Don't know. Let's meatball
if
stuff.
He was, it's meatball stuff. If he was still here, I mean, it would only be to provide guidance for Contreras because this was going to be Contreras' job.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Miggy talked himself out of town.
There's another thing, though. You got Contreras, you got Russell, Schwarber, even Bryant still early on in his career. Almora, and I'm probably missing some guys, but
Rizzo is still young.
Rizzo, but Rizzo's got some years under his belt. What I'm saying is, you got a lot of guys who are key guys who are like in their second or third year.
Yeah. Ian Happ has played well.
Yeah, Happ has played real well. But I heard somebody said to me the other day, they should trade Schwarber. Happ's a way better player than Schwarber, and I'm like, I mean, maybe the way you look at things, you would say that, but I would say this: not giving up on a guy with Schwarber's potential until he totally bombs out, and by that time, and I'm going to say this: if I was the GM, if he's going to bottom out, then obviously you're never going to get anything for him anyway.
Right.
And I don't think I've heard people say, well, you had said the rumor was Schwarber for Michael Fulmer from the Tigers. They're going to give up a frontline pitcher for a guy who's batting 170 something. I mean, Schwarber right now, I'm not saying this is going to be the way it always is, because I think the man's going to be a really good major league player. But I'll tell you what, he's worth on the trade market. He's probably worth almost zero right now.
I would think that. I would think that.
Yeah.
So, buyers or sellers?
I'd say stand pat.
I would say I would go along with what Theo said in his interview. He said it's going to depend on what's presented. What's presented.
Well, it's always going to be that.
He said we may do nothing. We may make one big trade. We may make one small trade. We may make two small trades. He said, but he says you can't predict. He says you can't look at it.
Oh.
Now you're in the position you're in. You look on the other side of town at the White Sox, who are in that sell mode.
Yeah.
And I know Milwaukee's interested in Quintana.
Yeah.
And they're looking at this, but I understand the prices. They want two prospects.
Well, that's the other thing. Are they going to get their what they want? I don't think all of the guys they have are going to get. They're not going to draw what they want out of the guys they have. Thank you, John. What's interesting, I was saying to somebody the other day, why are the White Sox not a better team than what they show record-wise? Because they've actually got a pretty strong ball club.
I have not.
They're weak. I guess you could say. I'll tell you. I think right now, not saying they regret the decision, but I think they pulled the trigger too quick on Tim Anderson with the extension.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would think so too.
And interesting thing,
his batting average is 240, and his on base average is 263.
Yeah. What's interesting though? A guy who was like, I think he was even a backup catcher in the minors. I think he was an afterthought, and only came up because of who got injured with the Sox, or did they just? No, they got rid of both.
Tyler
Avila and
Tyler Flowers has been gone for a couple of years.
No, but the two catchers from last year, Avila, and then they also got rid of the other guy who had been with the Cubs for a while.
Oh, Soto.
Yeah. No, Soto was the one who got hurt.
Soto got hurt. Yeah.
But at any rate, Kevin Smith comes up, and I didn't think that. I thought maybe this guy, because he was not a big prospect, would be just maybe a good defensive catcher, but he's hitting like in the 280s, I think.
288?
Yeah. And every time I look at the box score, he's getting a hit here, a couple hits there, and so he's hitting major league pitching at this point. And actually, I thought last year when they brought him up, and it was sort of a joke because he never played, he got hurt, swinging the bat in the on-deck circle. Yeah. And I thought they're just, they're throwing this guy a bone. You could say you played in the major leagues, but this year when he came up again, I mean, he's hitting the ball well.
Like the poor kid in the outfield that kept.
Yeah, Tilson. He's still trying to work it out.
Still trying to get hurt. So. I always feel sorry for that poor kid.
Here's another interesting thing. I thought they did the right thing when they brought the kid up, May, who had a big spring and played center, and then he didn't, he didn't do well. Yeah. He went down. But during the spring training, they always talked in terms of May and Engel, and there might have been another guy who, with Tilson hurt, might come up and fill that spot. And isn't it interesting that Adam Engel has come up and played pretty solid and done a pretty good job?
Yeah.
So one of my questions about the Sox would be, is whoever was evaluating their minor league people, how good are they at what they're doing? Because you got a couple guys who maybe were not the first choices, but the second choices to be brought up, and they're coming up and they're playing pretty well. So what are they actually looking at down there? Obviously they know what they're looking at to a great extent, but are they missing something down there? Are they missing something?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. And yes, you can miss. And by the way, speaking of the White Sox, they optioned Willie Garcia down to Charlotte.
Yeah. He wasn't playing a whole lot.
He wasn't playing that much.
Yeah.
Just looking. Well, no, he'd only gotten into 35 games.
Yeah.
I thought he had played a little more.
Yeah. No, but I like the Sox. They're entertaining.
They're entertaining. They're not as bad as I think everyone is expecting.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They are the worst team in the American League right now, record-wise, but not by much.
No.
I mean, they're 38-49. Oakland is 39-50.
You know what? I like Renteria too, because even when they have a dog game, he'll say, "You know what? Yeah, we have a bad game, but you know what? The guys are out there and they're grinding. And
he's the perfect manager for a team like this.
Mm-hmm.
He was the perfect manager for that Cub team that year. And I think, if the deal hadn't opened up with Joe being available, who knows if Renteria would have been the guy that got him to the playoffs and got him to the World Series.
I think he would have. The one thing that I was thinking about Joe Madden, Jim, and I'm not here to knock Madden, Renteria, or I'm only here to knock Paxson and Foreman, but but no. What I was going to say about Joe is that his I'll say. And I'm trying to say this in a nice way, but his act, wearing the pajamas, the whole shtick there.
Yeah.
I think that works for a while, but when you really get stuck for answers, it probably ends up not really working at all.
No, and he likes to keep a relaxed clubhouse,
which is fine.
I remember when he was with.
Tampa
Bay. He had the Jenny two-tone lineup, because when you looked at the lineup, the positions were 8-6-7-5-3-0-9.
Yeah.
And then added whatever else he needed to at the end. But that's just Joe.
I think Morrissey. I don't know that it fits this particular team. But a couple of columns ago, he had a good point. He said he was sort of knocking Joe for resting the guys. And I liked his point, even though, again, I'm not sure that it really applies to this team. But I've always said, if you're a team that's struggling, and I think I've said this on the air, and I know I've said it on the air because we talked about this in terms of, say, the Bears. Why are you rotating guys in and out when you need to win? Okay, and so I think the last time we were on, I said, my opinion, I think they should take John Jay and Almora and put them in the outfield with Hayward, and then they rotate Happ and Zobrist into the outfield. I say, if Schwarber's not doing it, sit him on the bench until you put him in a game here or there, and when he starts to find his groove, then rearrange things. But why are you? I look at John Jay as the guy I look at. Every time I look at him, he's batting right around 300. He's doing a heck of a job pinch hitting, and I'm thinking, what are you waiting for? Let this, as long as this guy's swinging a good bat, have him in the lineup every day until you have to change it.
300 as of the All-Star break.
Yeah. So why is he? Put it this way: why is he not playing every day?
Yeah.
Why is Ian Happ, who was coming up with a ton of big hits on a team that has a dearth of big hits, he should be in the lineup somewhere every day. Those guys should not be being rested. They're swinging the bat well,
Yep.
and you need that right now.
Yep.
So,
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah. Is it important?
Nope.
Nah. But that's that. I think Morrissey was making a good point, and it's one that I didn't read the column, but I understood where he was coming from. I like what he said.
Yeah. And Joe is great for looking for matchups, but sometimes you just got to go with the guys that are producing.
Jim, I remember when we had, I think the manager was either Baylor or Baker, and we had Todd Hundley, was catching, and he was having a terrible year.
God.
And all of a sudden, one day he comes up,
or when
and he had a couple of home runs in one game. And I watched the game the next afternoon. He's on the bench. And I'm saying exactly what you're saying. You know what? They brought this guy in. He was supposed to really help out. He hasn't up to this point. All of a sudden, he breaks out one afternoon. Wouldn't you leave him in the game?
Yeah.
See
Try
if,
to ride
can
it.
we capitalize on this a little bit?
That's right. Used to listen when Randy would fill in on the broadcast. Sometimes always hear reference to my son Todd.
You know what, Jim? I'm speaking about this from experience because I've done the same stupid things. Okay. Oh, well, yeah, we're gonna try to give everybody some time. No, go with the hot hand. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I've made the same dumb mistake.
Yeah. I'm sure.
So.
What
Did you get my text about Zach Levine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm actually, even though I said I would knock Paxton and Foreman, I'm beginning to have some hope for this trade that they made, sending Jimmy Butler. And a couple of the things that I was thinking about, Jim, is, Jimmy Butler is a good player. I never will say that he's not. He really was a great surprise for the Bulls because he was not a high, in the top 10 draft choices. Give him all the credit, and the Bulls all the credit in the world. But you have to think, what kind of success have we had with Jimmy Butler here? If he was really that good, he also was playing with some pretty good talent from time to time. Even last year, some good
occasionally
players. And we didn't do much. So this is not a knock Jimmy Butler session, but I'm saying, okay, Jimmy Butler goes to Minnesota, which is a great home for him, and Thibodeau will really, I think, do well with that team. Bringing Taj Gibson over is going to help. And
signed a 2-year deal.
Signed a 2-year deal.
Jeff Teague, wasn't he here at one point?
That's Marcus Teague.
Teague.
Jeff Teague,
that's
another
right.
good player.
Jeff Teague signed a 3-year deal.
Another good player.
That's right.
But I'm thinking Zach Levine, even though he's hurt, Thibodeau himself had really good things to say about this guy. And one of the points I was going to make, if you're going to get somebody good, which the Timberwolves did in Butler, and somebody they wanted because he's one of Thibodeau's guys, you got to give something up that's going to be potentially good. And Levine is that guy. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the number 7 draft choice, Markkanen, is going to be a good guy too.
He is a young version of Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah. Let's hope.
I really think so. I don't think this is going to be a very good team this year, but I don't think you're talking, Tim Floyd 17 wins.
No, Cowley had an article the other day. He said, now we got to get worse. So we got to make sure we get rid of Wade, and
that may happen. That may happen.
At the trade deadline, we got to get rid of Lopez. I'm not so sure I agree with you. You don't want to get really way worse.
You don't want to get Philadelphia worse.
No.
You're, if you're lucky, you win 10 games.
No. And I think this team might actually surprise you and be a little bit better than what you think. But that remains to be seen.
And going about teams that might surprise everyone this year. And I was listening, and I heard Hub Arkush on the air yesterday. And I just, I don't know why I'm having this funny feeling. I think the Bears could surprise people this year.
Oh, I've been saying that for a while.
I don't know if we're talking huge gains, but I think we may be talking 7-9 or 8-8.
Well, I may end up regretting I say this, but I think I'm not going to say any numbers. But first off, I think Pace is a sharp guy. He knows what he's doing. You know what? When you,
I think he does too, but still think he overpaid on that trade because that Trubisky would have been there.
I'm not sure about that, but to me, put it this way, I think what he did is surprise the heck out of everybody.
Oh, shocked everyone.
And you know what? Everything I've heard so far about Trubisky is accurate.
Yep.
Glennon as well is accurate.
Yep.
And I think you probably have a nice blend of guys that are at that quarterback position, because I think, if Glennon's 1 and Trubisky is 2, and Mark Sanchez, who I know carries a lot of baggage with him, but when you really look at his career, especially the beginning of it, was a very good quarterback, and he's going to be the number 3 guy. I mean, you got some depth at that position now.
Yeah.
If you got to go like if say God forbid, what happened last year happens this year, you get down to your 3-man, you got a guy with a lot of experience that's going to be out there.
Yeah.
So, and when I look at the guys he signed for the defensive backfield, do they have gaudy numbers as far as picks and whatnot? No, but you know what? He's thrown a lot of bodies at it, experienced as well as unexperienced, and there's going to be some competition, and whoever comes out of that as the winner at least will have had the fight for that spot, and I think that's a good thing. So I think that I think our offensive line, if Long comes back healthy, and the other guys are all back as well, should be fine. The tight end position is going to be very interesting.
That's going to be interesting to see who comes out of that.
Because I saw something else that was really actually, I would not be surprised, Jim, that Zach Miller somewhere down the line goes, because what they're saying is that you got the new kid. His name's not coming off the top of my head.
The big kid from
like Adam. Can't think of his last name.
Yeah, I just drew.
But you got Deion Sims. But what I'm reading is the Bears are still very interested in Bronnecker and Daniel Brown, who both. They feel those guys both have some upside. So what they're saying, the papers, and I think they might be onto something here, is with those 3 young tight ends plus a veteran in Sims, Zach Miller, as good as he is, but injury prone, you never know about if we're going to have Zach Miller here or not.
Mm-hmm.
So... and I would agree with that. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's something the Bears are going to look at really, really hard. And put it this way: if those guys can knock Zach Miller out of the box, then our tight end situation should be pretty. It should be pretty nice.
It should be in a pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into something else because it was something, and I think I may have forwarded an article from Rosner. Over to you.
I haven't seen that one.
I can't remember if I did or not.
Of course, I have and I won't get on this for more than 30 seconds. I have a couple people who forward me so much garbage that some of the stuff, other than actually business stuff, which I have to look at, gets lost in the shuffle.
I don't know. I can't remember if I forwarded you the email or if I just shared the post on Facebook and tagged you with it. I can't remember.
Well, if on Facebook, I probably would have seen it.
But I was thinking, there was a couple of things I was thinking about. I was driving home. This past week from Oak Park, and traffic was just god awful. And I had the Cub game on. And I was listening to the game, and I'm going, Jesus, they seem to be awfully chatty in between pitches this year. They seem to be talking an awful lot. And then I happen to come.
Jim is reaching for some material here.
I happen to find an article. I happen to find an article in an old Sports Illustrated that was around talking about baseball is being eaten alive by the two-headed power monster of strikeouts and home runs. Players and management must address the pace of play problem. And there's a deeper question. What will happen to a sport in which nothing happens? And they talk about the fact that the average number of time between pitches right now is 23.8 seconds, which is about a second slower than a year before. And if you go back to 2007, that's about 2 seconds slower than a year before. But I'm kind of looking at this thinking the same thing with the home runs and the fact that so many of the plays there's not that many, so many of the plays seem to be a strikeout, a walk, or a home run.
Yeah, I guess.
But I kind of look at this and go, well, this is a phase that the game goes through.
Yeah, I agree.
They
go through all kinds of phases.
We went through the steroid phase.
Yeah.
We went through, the game was the dead ball until the 20s.
Yeah.
And now the allegation is that the ball is more tightly wound.
That is, I've heard, how many times have I heard that?
We've heard that for years.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, I know your favorite exit velocity.
Oh yeah, that's great.
That's almost as good as BABIP.
BABIP, yeah, that's a good one.
But what are they teaching the young players? Well, they talk about what is it, exit angle, or whatever. If you hit the ball this way and you hit it really hard, you're going to hit a home run.
Duh.
Yeah. Hey, wow.
Well, what subject are we talking about? The length of the game?
We're talking about
what are we talking about?
We're talking about pace of play.
Pace of play. Well, you know what, Jim? I look at it like this. People will say, I laugh. The NFL has talked about some of the same things, and I said, you know what? Until and unless, and it's never going to happen, you don't have a commercial timeout every 4 downs, the game is going to take over 3 hours, okay?
Sure.
And the more you pay the players, there's nothing wrong with paying the players, whatever. You know what? The more commercial time you have to sell, so the longer the commercials are going to be, so the longer the breaks are going to be in between, the longer the game's going to go. That's it.
Yeah.
There is no. They could talk till the cows come home how to shorten that game. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Same thing with baseball. They're not going to tell the managers to quit making 5 pitching changes in a game.
No.
Because then the league is dictating how a game should be run, and that's not going to happen either.
And that's not going to happen. Oh, geez. It was on this subject, Jim, and one of the players, it was a Cub, I think, that had said, and it wasn't about the wasn't about all the pitching changes, but it was something else. I'll tell you, I got to say, I don't know how many years ago was the first time I heard talk about, say, a time clock in between pitches. They've been talking about that as long as I've been hearing the politicians talk about term limits. I remember that back in the 60s, the scoreboard at Comiskey Park had the pitchometer.
Yeah.
And it was never enforced.
And you know what? The umpire, I'll tell you what, I umpire a little bit. It's in 16 inch softball, it's a different deal. But if you think the umpires are going to want to bring that garbage, all the flack you're going to take because the guy went 2 seconds over the pitch clock or whatever, And now you're going to call. What are you going to call a ball, or what are you calling here? I mean, what's the deal? What's the penalty?
What is it? Is it the pitcher's fault? Is it the batter's fault? Was the batter not in
Well, that's
position?
the other thing. The batter. You know what, guys. Some guys just take longer than the other. There's a guy. We call him Powder, Chris Johnson. Softball. Every time he gets into the box, and he's probably one of the top 5 hitters in the game. He's got a routine. Not many guys go through this, and his doesn't take long. It's 5 seconds, but he does it every time. And when I first looked at it, I thought he was just, messing around. But he does the same thing every time. What am I going to tell him? Don't do it? You can't do that. That's what he does. What if it helps him, or he's got to have a routine like that? So I don't see them. Manfred has talked about. Oh, well, we'll eliminate the intentional walk. What is that going to save?
What did that save? 20 seconds?
Yeah, 20. I was going to say 20 seconds.
Oh, yeah, and somebody said, okay, don't make it 2 minutes in between innings. Put a little box up in the corner. Make it 1 minute, and you can run in your little commercial.
Well,
up in the corner, which is going to destroy the game. Which is going to destroy the viewing of the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jim. I'm not a 20-something. But obviously, neither of us are. Here's the other thing I was going to say. You go when we talk about this over coffee with the guys, because this has come up. I'm like, hey, when I go out to the ball game, and I was just recently approached by somebody that said, "Oh, got a great deal. The Cubs-Sox game at Wrigley Field, bleacher seats, all you can eat and drink before the game, all the way through the second inning, $90." And I'm like, you think that's a great deal? I go, first off, you're sitting in the bleachers. That's like a $2 seat. I said, the second thing is I can't eat or drink $90 worth of stuff. You could give me like 3 days. I can't eat that much. And I said, so what's the big deal?
Yeah.
I mean, but my point would be, when you're paying that much to get into a game, those were bleacher seats. That was the deal for bleacher seats. What, you want the game to be over like in an hour and a half?
No.
I don't.
I want my money's worth.
If I'm the owner, I'm sitting there. Well, I'm pretty sure the owners get a cut off the concessions and all that.
Yeah.
So, what, you're going to tell me the games are going to take 2 hours and everybody's going to spend less money? No way.
No, I want it to go along. I keep thinking of that great one back in the '60s, the Cubs and the Cardinals game, and it was a businessman special down at Busch Stadium. Midweek start, midweek game, 12:30 start. Gibson versus Jenkins. The game was over in about an hour and 32 minutes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
The businessmen better have got there pretty quick.
You better get there pretty quick, and you better go right back to the office after this, because, by golly, you got an afternoon.
I would put, obviously you want to see a good pace to the game. And pace doesn't mean, to me, a shorter time period necessarily, but pace is pace. Everybody's maybe has their own idea of what that is. But you know what? I don't want to go and feel like it's almost like when you go into a restaurant and it's close to closing time. You never feel comfortable because you feel like, I got to eat and get out of here. I cannot relax and enjoy the experience. Well, I'd say the same thing. You're going to try to hustle this game along to what purpose?
Yeah.
The game is meant to be played at a fairly casual pace.
It is casual, it is cerebral, and that's always been the beauty of the game. All right. We should probably get out of here.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know
look
what
at John. He fell asleep over there.
I don't know what else. Actually, I had a little missive from Statboy on Del Maxville, but I think I'll save that for the next time.
Well, no. What about Del Maxville?
Oh, it was actually interesting. Of course, Steve's alter ego, Statboy, although he does claim Statboy is a real person.
Okay.
You have to excuse me here.
By the way, I met Steve only once. It was at Jim's wedding, and a really nice guy. So whatever is said here is in the most positive vein.
Oh, yeah. I've known Stat, he claims Statboy is
his alter ego.
His alter ego.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I can't look at all those stats, John. They start to give me a headache when I look at them too much.
Let me see if I can I got a new phone, and I'm still.
You're still
I got it
figuring it out?
I got I got a new phone 2 days ago.
Oh.
Because my old one just.
Well, what's the gist of this? As long as you're searching. Sounds good. I don't know what the gist is.
Talk amongst yourselves. I'll find it.
I just to prep the audience.
Okay. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
All right. I don't have to prep anybody.
He said, this from Statboy. He has to come up from the basement more often. I think the season affective disorder is starting to get to him.
Uh-oh.
In praise of Dal Maxville.
Jeez.
If we look at great shortstops in St. Louis Cardinals history, Ozzie Smith, Marty Marion, Gary Templeton, Leo DeRocher. Leo DeRocher was a good ball player, good shortstop in his day. We have to consider one who may fly under the radar, but who was one of the few players who played on 5, count them, 5 World Series teams.
Wow.
Okay, 2 of them were with Oakland, but if you want to know the true anchor of the 1960s Cardinals teams, it's Dal Maxville. Sure, the season-to-season OPS plus figures look like speed ratings of a horse who spent 15 years trying to break maiden. And he looked like Wally Cox's brother, but don't forget, Wally Cox was a badass.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Not too many people in the 60s rode their motorcycles to the studio and did the entire wiring in their home, but Wally Cox did. Ergo, badass. For a .217 career hitter, this Maxville guy has had chops. Sabermetricians are still discussing his first home run against Al Jackson of the Mets. It is said that the ball hit somewhere in center field between the S&T of the Chesterfield cigarette sign and center field of the Polo Grounds, some 570 feet away.
Wow. I never heard that before.
I don't remember that. He also hit, quite possibly, the first inside-the-park home run in Busch Stadium, too, and he holds the distinction of being the first major leaguer to hit a home run outside of the U.S. when he tagged former teammate Larry Jaster for a grand slam, or Le Slam Grand, if you wish, at
Montreal,
at
right?
Jerry Park, or Park Jerry,
Yeah.
in an inning where the Cardinals scored 7 runs, aided by 5 Montreal errors.
Ooh.
In one inning, sorry you took the job there, Gene Mock.
Yeah.
In 1968 may have been Maxville's strongest year. He hit .253 with a .329 OBP in the year of the pitcher, surpassing others in the OBP, on-base percentage,
Yeah.
department as Orlando Cepeda, Gene Alley, Tim McCarver, Johnny Bench, Veda Pinson, Don Kessinger, Willie Davis, Randy Hundley, and Hal Lanier. In fact, Bob Gibson's 1.12 earned run average that year was a big result of having Maxville at short. Maxville was second on the team in OBP, 10 percentage points behind Curt Flood. But alas, a man can only carry a team so far. And Maxville's 0 for 22 showing in the 1968 World Series against Detroit was a major part of why the Redbirds lost. As goes Maxville, so goes St. Louis. Fielding-wise, Maxville ranks 95th all-time in defensive WAR. And 31st in zone runs at shortstop. That's a new one. I don't know what that one. Not that the zone run thing floats Statboy's boat, but he has range. He had an arm. He was badass. In an ill-fated move for the Cards, St. Louis moved him to Oakland, where he grew the best porn stash of the 70s and got World Series rings in 72, though he didn't play, and 74. So between 64 and 74, old Charles Dalian Maxville got into 5 World Series, winning 4 of them. And in 1964, the World Series, in the 1964 World Series, he caught the final out, and the Yankees never saw the light of October for another 12 years. Yes, Dal Maxville ended the Yankees' dynasty. Now, this next bit of information that he provides, I don't know where his sources were on that, but I will present this. Off the field, Maxville was said to have dalliances, no pun intended, with several famous women such as Marilyn Monroe, Tuesday Weld, Mary Tyler Moore, Bess Meyerson, Goldie Hawn, Vicky Carr, Twiggy, Nichelle Nichols, Jackie Kennedy, Natalie Wood, Audrey Hepburn, and Julie Newmar. He denied those rumors, claimed they were all good friends and avid Cardinal fans. The rumors persisted into the 1970s with names such as Adrienne Barbeau, Carol Wayne, Kate Jackson, Cher, first daughter Susan Ford, Karen Carpenter, Pam Grier, and Linda Ronstadt. Again, he simply referred to them as good friends. It is also reported that Maxville came up with the iconic design for the Ford Mustang, convinced Capitol Records to sign the Beatles, and invented VistaVision.
Oh, my God.
With such adulation and potential distractions, Maxville was the target of many envious teammates. It's little wonder that Maxville's batting average is as surprisingly low as it is. But I rest my case. Dal Maxville. Badass.
Do you remember the nice things that I said about Steve being a good guy? After hearing that article or that little essay about Dal Maxville, that man is seriously in need of some professional help.
He's always been that way.
Oh my gosh!
This was the guy when this was the guy back in the Chicagoland Football League days. He suggested some promotions to me that we should bring up. He suggested things we found under the stand day. Give that as a giveaway, and when they were having the game worn uniforms promotions at like the hockey games at the end of the year, give the if you won the drawing, the player would come take his uniform off and give it.
Yeah.
He suggested socks off our feet day.
Oh my gosh! You know what, Jim? I'll tell you what.
When he sent me that, I said, "You had a little too much. You had a little too much Mountain Dew, didn't you?"
Somebody, sometimes names pop into my head, and I do a little research on them, and I could probably tell a few things about these guys. But to sit down and write that much, and look, I certainly learned a lot about Dal Maxville today. But
I question that last bit of.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where you got that stuff.
I don't know either. I'm going to have to ask him.
Well, anyway, Jad is sitting here. I think he's probably got to go make some money because I see he's got his work clothes on. So
yeah, it means we got to get out of here.
He's got to go. I think he's going. Where are you going, Jad? Rolling Meadows.
Rolling Meadows. Okay. We used to refer. Well, I won't say what we used to refer. Rolling Ghettos. We used to call it. Yeah. Yeah. Still do. Okay. All right, let's get out of here. We going to do this again next week? Are we going to get back on our schedule, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, either way. I mean,
all right.
2 weeks, next week, I don't care. I'll be there either way.
All right. Well, we'll think about this. Week or two, and we'll figure it out. We'll see what we want to talk about. We may be talking about Cub trades next time.
That's possible.
All right. Time for us to boogie. Let's clear out of here. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks. Hope you had some fun. God knows we did. We come in here trying to figure out what to talk about and spend over an hour doing it.
Yep.
All right.
That's it. Fun.
That's it. We're out of here. We are Taillights.
Actually, though, Jim, that's a...
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Wednesday, July the 12th on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVito, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflick of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikondo. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, July the 11th, the year 2017. Until next time, friends, be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone.